you know, there are people that say, well, the prime minister of Israel dragged Donald Trump into it. And as somebody that's been friends with him over 30 years, nobody drags Donald Trump into anything, number one. But I want to get your reaction to that.
Can't. I mean, Bibi's running around. This is a fact. I'm not guessing about this because I talked to people he said it to, is running around the Middle East, his region, and his own country and telling people point blank, just stating it, I control the United States. I control Donald Trump. He's saying that. And again, I'm not guessing at all. That's a fact. And I dare them to say that's not true because it is true and they know it's true. So I'm an American. How do you think it makes me feel? Even if I didn't vote for Trump, which I did vote, I campaigned for Trump. But even if it was Joe Biden, I'm an American. You can't treat. It's too humiliating. I can't handle that. And I shouldn't have to put up with that. This is a country of 9 million people. I'm not even attacking the country. I'm attacking my leaders who are allowing my nation of 350 million people to be forced into doing things that are bad for me and my children because of some other country. Like, that is a violation of the most basic arrangement we have with our leaders.
So let me get this straight. Today's justification for the war is that if Iran was attacked by Israel or the United States, they'd attack the United States. So the United States' decision was that they should join Israel and attack them together. I'm just curious here, who's running the show, Trump or Netanyahu? And I don't think the answer to that question is one that the America Firsters are gonna like. Because you would think that the country that we sell a bunch of weapons to, the country that we're clearly in bed with, the country that we call our closest ally and give a bunch of money to, would be a little bit more afraid of the President of the United States.
Some people ask the question, why is Donald Trump doing everything the Zionists are asking of him? The reason Donald Trump is doing everything, Art, that the Zionists are asking of him, because Donald Trump is in those Epstein files. Donald Trump is in those Epstein files. Congress has already ordered the Department of Justice, Art, to release all the Epstein files by Friday.
What is the real reason, in your understanding, why Donald Trump bombed and attempted to destroy a lawful, inspected, approved uranium enrichment program in a sovereign country?
Well, because Benjamin Netanyahu told him to. So the president followed his orders.
Is the United States subordinate to the demands, commands, and purported needs of Israel?
Yes. It's now unambiguous. There was a small question mark before, but now it's absolutely clear. This was not in America's interest. We were actually in the process of negotiating a settlement.
I read somewhere this ridiculous lie. President Trump does what he does because he decides what's in America's best interest. And I've said this often, I don't decide a thing for President Trump. He is the most independent leader, an amazing leader that I've seen in all my years, and I think many people in the world see that. So the idea that in any ways that I boast, that I control him, that's ridiculous.
So, ladies and gentlemen, something very unusual is happening right now in America. And as we already know, the United States is involved in yet another war in the Middle East, of course, against Iran. But this time, something is different. The American population themselves are openly saying, we do not want this war. Across social media, across interviews, across protest, Americans are asking one question that this government hates to hear. And the question is, who is really making these decisions to war? And now this respected American economist, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, is stepping forward and saying something that I feel is very, important. According to him, this war is not what the American people want. He says this war is being driven by political interest, by power struggles, and by the influence of Benjamin Netanyahu on Donald Trump and the US. So the real question becomes, who actually controls the American foreign policy? Because it looks like Americans themselves do not have control of that. Someone else is pulling the strings. Whenever Israel are in their own problems or want a war of their own, they have to drag America into this war. So let's continue to listen to this gentleman, and I'll be back with some more good commentary at the end.
This is the U.S. Attempt to continue or maintain or sustain its global hegemony. This is a war for control of the Middle East. It's a war for control of the oil of the Middle East. It is not at all what Donald Trump said about any threat from Iran. This is just an imperial lie. This is an imperial war, and it is a very vicious one, and it is probably the start of World War III, I have to say. I hope that it's not the start of nuclear annihilation, but I think it is a global war. And it is a war of U.S.-Israeli hegemony in the Middle East and a war for global dominance. The United States invaded Venezuela to control the Western Hemisphere oil. Now it is trying to overthrow the government of Iran to control the Middle East oil. This will hurt India terribly, by the way, and it's also aimed at China. So Asia is the loser in this war, and this is a completely criminal action. But whether anybody stands up and tells the truth about it that is fearful of the United States or Israel, I don't know.
What do you think is going to happen next, Professor Sachs? You know, as far as the escalation ladder is concerned, attacks have taken place on various cities in Iran. There have been retaliatory attacks on US bases in Bahrain, in Abu Dhabi, in Qatar, and a couple of other places. In the past, things have kind of ended at this point. Do you see them escalating onward from here?
Well, of course, there is no path of de-escalation by the U.S. and Israel. These are hegemonic actors. They have announced their goal. Their goal isn't to return Iran to the negotiating table. Iran was at the negotiating table. Their goal was not to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. It didn't have one, didn't want one, and had said so for the last 12 years. Donald Trump ripped up the agreement, the JCPOA, that put Iran under a rigorous monitoring regime. This is about global hegemony. And countries like India have to decide, are they independent countries? Do they sign up to U.S. empire? This is what this is about. Israel, by the way, is the most violent country in the world, kilometer by kilometer, by far. But it also banks on having the United States behind it. And it's not just Trump. This is a long-standing CIA project that is underway right now. So this is a very, very dangerous occurrence. This has nothing to do with what is stated. This is about U.S. control over the Middle East, and the idea is U.S. control over the world. The idea is that India will fall into line, the Middle East will fall into line, Latin America has no choice, Europe is a vassal state. That's what this is about.
Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump have just spoken over the phone, according to the latest of what we're hearing, Professor Sachs. In your mind, you know, what might they have discussed? Obviously, I'm not asking you to conjecture, but from everything we know, Netanyahu is calling this Operation Roaring Lion. President Trump calls it Epic Fury. What do you think they talked about?
Well, Trump takes his orders from Netanyahu. This is very simple. Netanyahu came last week and ordered the war, and the war goes on. The United States is actually not even the lead agent in this. The Zionist lobby in the United States is so powerful that it puts the United States repeatedly into these wars. The American public is absolutely against this. This is quite interesting. But the American public does not count for anything right now in our affairs because we do not have a constitutional country. we have basically a military state, and Trump is the figurehead of that military state.
As far as the Al Khamenei is concerned, Professor Sachs, do you see this playing out in the same template that it has before? His ceremonial home has been targeted. He is about to make a national address in a short while from now. The same boilerplate statements have been issued from Iran saying, there will be a crushing response, and you've seen these token attacks on different bases of the American military in the Middle East. Does Iran have the capacity to do something bigger in your view?
I don't think that the U.S. has the capacity to overthrow the Iranian government in a day or a week or a month, as it believes that it does. If you look at almost all events like this, even overthrowing Bashar al-Assad or overthrowing Milosevic in 1999, or overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, the United States does not usually have the means to do this in a day or a month. Maybe they're drunk with their supposed success in Venezuela by exfiltrating a president, but this is not Venezuela. This is a country of 100 million people. It's a vast region. It is a mountainous region. It is a region that understood for many, many years that the United States was out to overthrow it. So it's not unprepared or caught off guard. The Straits of Hormuz, I believe, will be attacked. And so I don't think that these are pinprick operations attacking the Gulf. I think it's preparatory to closing the Straits of Hormuz. Now, all of this then depends on things that I don't properly understand in terms of the military dynamics of the next few weeks. But what I do understand is something about geopolitics. This is a brazen, illegal, vulgar overreach by the United States that I do not see how it can have a success, frankly. One success 73 years ago was when the CIA and MI6 overthrew the Iranian government and installed a police state. I don't see how that can happen in today's world. But that's the model of the United States, that they will soon install a police state. I doubt that this is at all realistic.
Professor Sachs, Reuters reporting a piece of breaking news right now since you mentioned the Gulf of Hormuz. Reuters quoting the IRGC Navy that has announced that no vessels are any longer being allowed to cross and has closed the Strait of Hormuz to any traffic. This is huge. This is Reuters reporting this right now. What do you think the fallout of this immediately is going to be?
Well, I think that this is the Iranian plan. The United States will try to defeat Iran to prevent this from happening. But I would anticipate that there will be a massive disruption of world oil flows in the coming weeks, and that this will most likely, again, I'm guessing, everybody knows I'm guessing because nobody can really anticipate, but I'm guessing that this will put the world economy into a serious crisis in the coming weeks. Again, I'm not there as a military strategist. If the United States thinks it has something up its sleeve, I would be surprised, quite frankly. By the way, I heard just 5 minutes ago that one of the U.S. bombs killed 100 schoolgirls in a school outside of Tehran. This is mass murder. We should not forget the school children that are dying right now. We'll hear more about this, but I just heard this from a reliable source 5 minutes ago. This is a brazen, murderous, illegal attack, and it's very dangerous for the world. World leaders are pathetic right now. In Europe, they all fall in behind Trump. In Canada, they fell in behind Trump. In Australia, they fell in behind Trump. No one wants peace in this world. They just want to satisfy a mad emperor. This is very dangerous for all of us, I have to say. If people cannot speak the most basic truth of a premeditated, murderous, illegal strike on another country, well, how can we avoid World War III?
What role do you think Russia will or can play in what lies ahead, Professor Sachs? Because the Iranian regime will be looking to Russia. They've been looking to Russia for their weapons supply chain in the run-up to this as well. How do you see the Russian role?
I think both Russia and China will try to find ways to sustain the Iranian regime. This is, as I say, an attack on China as much as it is an attack on Iran. This is part of an American hegemonic move. India should not feel comfortable about that, however. It's going to suffer directly from this, and the whole world suffers when the United States behaves like the British Empire. We don't need another global empire. This is the most basic point.
Final question, Professor Sachs. There was an 8-minute video statement that was put out by Donald Trump. I know you've seen it. After these attacks began, what did you think of that? Because he was very clear. Even if you accommodate all the hyperbole that you usually grant Trump and his brand of communication, he was very specific about his intended outcome being regime change and the people of Iran rising up and taking back what's theirs. Do you think he's painted himself into a corner, or does that not really matter in Trump's world?
It doesn't matter, but he has painted all of us into the edge of a global precipice. He's a very mentally unstable person. He is delusional and he is a megalomaniac. But on top of that, behind him is the CIA and Mossad. So this is not Trump alone. These are grandiose ideas, long-standing. So it's not only Trump, but there's no brake. There's no foot on the brake. This is only an accelerator towards expanded war right now. And the only way that it can stop is if the BRICS countries, and that means India, that means Brazil, that means Russia, that means China, that means South Africa, and others, and it's Iran, which is a member of the BRICS, says this is not the way the world can work. They have to stand up to American hegemony. This is the only way the world can be safe. And so this is actually a responsibility of the BRICS right now, which is the only standing bulwark against America's global empire. And the empire has gotten a lot more violent today. And it's shown it doesn't want to hide anything anymore. It just is in open war.
Now, Americans are rejecting this war. And one thing is becoming very clear, and it's that many Americans are deeply uncomfortable with this very particular conflict. Across the United States, citizens are questioning the purpose of this war and the cost of this war, and most importantly, the lives that will be lost in this war, be they of Americans or even Iranians or any other people that will be, caught in the crossfire. Interviews with many Americans show widespread skepticism about the strikes on Iran, with many saying this war lacks a clear strategy and will only drag, the country into another long and unnecessarily costly conflict. And honestly, Americans have seen this movie before. They saw it with Iraq, they saw it with Afghanistan, they saw it with Libya, so on and so forth. War begins with the promises of quick victory and ends with or in decades of chaos and costs, in human lives and in the resources. Professor Jeffrey Sachs says there is a huge disconnect between the American people and the political system that makes these decisions. According to him, most Americans actually oppose this war, yet somehow this war keeps, moving forward anyway. you know. And Jeffrey's explosive claim here has been, and he blatantly is blatant about what he believes is happening. He argues that this conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran was not sudden and not accidental. Instead, he says it was planned and premeditated. You know, Professor Jeffrey Sachs claims that this war is part of a broader geopolitical strategy, which we have seen it play out, very recently. And in his view, Israel wants military dominance in the Middle East, while the United States seeks global dominance through its alliances and military presence. And here is why his argument becomes, more maybe controversial. He has repeatedly suggested that the Israeli leadership has played a major role in pushing United States into wars in the Middle East, including previous conflicts such as Iraq, and of course these ongoing tensions with Iran right now. And this is a very serious point, by the way, but it raises a bigger question that many Americans are now asking. Is the US foreign policy being shaped primarily by American interest or by geopolitical alliances and lobbying power? Does this decision really sit with the Americans, or it's from outside? That's the question. But then we have to give the perspective that this is today we're living in a very multipolar world, And yet another point that Professor Sachs highlights is the changing structure of global power. For many years, the United States operated in a unipolar world structure where Washington largely dictated rules that would really determine what happens across the globe. But today the world is shifting. You see countries like China, Russia, and the rising blocs like BRICS are reshaping the global economic structure or economic system. Iran, for example, does major energy trade with countries like India and China, which are members of the BRICS. That means American sanctions and the pressures they have been trying to exert on them no longer really isolate this country and isolate countries the way they once did, So the strategy of forcing nations to comply through intimidation or military pressure simply doesn't work the same way anymore. And this is where Sachs says that the United States risk making a major strategic mistake, because in a multipolar world, influence is built through diplomacy and cooperation, not through constant bullying and constant wars. And the political risk is for America, and it's very evident. Even inside Washington, there are signs of concern. And some US lawmakers are warning that there is no clear long-term plan for what happens after the strikes on Iran. The rising fears that the conflict could spiral into something far larger, far more than what was anticipated, or that America would want to have been part of. And the consequences could be enormous. Economic shocks, regional instability, and possibly a wider war involving multiple global powers. And that's going to be obviously very devastating. This is why critics argue that America is risking repeating the same mistakes that damage or have been damaging its credibility around the world right now. So instead of strengthening its position, these wars and this bullying, we could call it, could accelerate the perception that American global power is declining, and now they only have one way, which is, bullying people into accepting their advances, which is obviously not going to work. So at the end of the day, the real issue here is not just about Iran, Israel, or even Donald Trump. The deeper issue is about democracy itself. If the American people are saying they do not want this war, but the war continues anyway, then the question becomes unavoidable. Who is actually making the decisions? Because the American people who wield all the power constitutionally do not want this war, but this war still goes on, you know. But history has shown us something very important. Empires do not collapse only because of external enemies. Sometimes they collapse because the people inside the empire, they lose trust in the system that claims to represent them. And if that trust disappears, the consequences will reshape the empire itself and the entire world, of course, you know, eventually. Yeah. So really, that's my take from this video. I don't know what you think about it. Do let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You can share it as well, and you can as well consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll really appreciate. So with that, I'll see you in the next video.